colleagues in person for the first time in 15 months, and it's nice to see some live, happy faces. We have 4 substantive matters tonight, but the first thing is to deal with the minutes of the May meeting. If there are no changes, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
And Kathy, will you sit for this?
Sure.
You
Oh,
second?
so second?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, that's the minutes. And so case number 1, 33 Fenton Road. Andrew McKinney, applicant, has made application to the Board of Appeals for a special permit under section 6.1.2, 7.5.2, and any other applicable sections of the bylaw to allow a third car garage. Property is located at 33 Fenton Road in the single residence B district. And we had another hearing on this a month ago where we granted a special permit for an accessory dwelling unit, but they overlooked the fact that they needed to deal with garage. So you want to just say a few words about what you're doing for those who haven't heard it before?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, as you just mentioned, your board graciously granted us permission to build the ADU unit for my mom in this house that we're building. And what we're asking for tonight is permission to build a 3-car garage. So the idea would be that for the ADU, there would be garage parking for it.
Right. Is there anyone in the audience here on this? Well, it's helpful. Let me just go through what comments we have from town officials. Did we get something from the planning board?
Yes. It's on the first one in your meeting sheet.
In this?
That came the day, just this week. Those are the new comments. It's on the very first page, the very first page.
You have it? So, thank you, Kathy. So the planning board's comment is the board wishes to note the addition of an ADU itself is not sufficient reason to allow an additional garage. However, in the case the board sees no issue with the design of the extra garage bay, we have no comment. So I think basically they're having no comment. Just to run through the rest of them. The town building inspector said, I'm not opposed to this permit. The Public Works mentioned that you have to comply with the stormwater requirements of the town when you pull a building permit, which I think probably mean you have to build a dry well that captures the runoff from the roof, but they can explain it.
Yeah, we'll be addressing those comments in the when we submit for the actual building permit.
And as I'm doing it from memory, the police and the fire had no comment, and the health department just wants you to pay attention to pest control as you knock things down and build up. Are there any questions from anyone on the board?
Yeah, just a comment that would support in favor of this is that the garage, as it's displayed in some of your materials that you filed, it breaks up the 2 garage doors on one side with the third on the other side slightly broken. It has a nice look. With the requirements under the section 6.12 is that it sort of more or less blends in with the character, not alter the character of the neighborhood. In terms of the lighting, where is the lighting? We're trying to make sure it doesn't have glare onto the neighbor's property. So when you light up the garage driveway area, is there an exterior lighting?
It should be just above the garage door. That's the only lighting.
So it's sort of pointing down and not
Yeah,
glaring.
just typical, like kind of like a lantern light, just above each garage door.
Okay, that sounds appropriate.
Yeah, there's gonna be no flood lighting the street or anything. Just above the garage.
Any other questions? Any questions from the board? Someone want to make a motion?
So I move that the applicant's request for special permit under the sections 612 and 752 to allow the third car garage based upon the submitted plans be approved.
Kathy,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
All right, you're done. Well, we got to write our decision, but it'll be coming. Good luck. Have you started construction?
No, we're close to the demo stage.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right,
Thanks
good
so
luck.
much. Appreciate it.
Good luck. Thank you, thank you.
Oh, dear. I'm really having troubles tonight. My papers. All right. Case number 2 is 34 Grosvenor Road. Kieran Han, applicant, has made application to the Board of Appeals for a special permit under sections 1.4.6, 4.2.1, 7.5.2, any other applicable sections of the bylaw to allow the change, extension, alteration, and enlargement to a lawful pre-existing non-conforming building associated with the addition of a mudroom and a covered back patio to a detached two-car garage. Property is at 34 Grosvenor Road in the Single Residence B District. And on this one, Mr. Friedenberg is going to sit with Ms. Goldman and I as the board. We're technically a three-man board. And
So
Ms.
he's
Ber-
looked at the drawings.
and Ms. Berardi will not be participating. Yeah, why don't you explain
makes
that?
sense.
Because
Sure.
I'm honestly, I've driven by and I'm a little confused of just what you are doing.
Sure.
I see
so-
the garage is separated by a very small distance from the house.
Right, and that's not going to change. There's no proposed changes to the currently existing structures. So we've lived in this home for about 10 years now. And if Mr. Friedenberg, you've seen some of the photos I've provided, some of the issues we have with the home over these years is kind of the lack of an entryway. So there's some photos of our door opening up directly, maybe about 2 or 3 feet, right into our front stairs, into a front closet, which can't even accommodate one dog, which usually is, if you can see the photo, it's measured by my dog, who's always there. And so it's hard to get any other family members or friends into the front. I did not add a photo of the rear entry, but it's a similar situation where we enter right into the kitchen. So there's no kind of entryway. So that's one of the objectives of this proposal. The second objective kind of came out of the experience of the last year with COVID, in understanding that the need, it's more than a, kind of a want, but it's a need to have a safe outdoor space for people to gather, family, friends, things like that. So what we initially proposed to do was to pour a back patio behind this detached garage and add a covering, an open air covering, not screened in, not pre-seasoned, but something that would allow people to gather in mild to moderate inclement weather. We have put in a gas line so we could put in some heating or a fireplace or things like that. So when we went to get the permits for this applications, the issue came up that because of our home is 1947, non-conforming for side setbacks to the current 12 feet, which is required. It's by doing what we wanted to do, essentially, we would have an additional non-conformance if we attach the patio, this covered roof. If we attach that to the proposed mudroom, which Mr. Roche did not have a problem with, it would, in essence, make our side setback to 10.3 feet, where the current bylaw requires a 12-foot setback. Because the garage, the 1947 garage, is at 10.3 feet setback.
So how far out I take it this is an open patio, but
It's
you're
an
putting a
open
roof?
patio.
You're putting a roof?
and we're just putting, it's kind of, I describe it as a front porch, but in the backyard.
But it's a roof structure.
It's a roof structure, so
It's
it's,
just not going to be enclosed. But
it won't be enclosed. It's a roof structure.
It-
And
it-
the roof structure will be at the conforming 12 feet setback.
It will be.
It will be. I believe the reason why the building inspector couldn't permit me this, the permit as of right, is because the garage, the current garage, which was built in 1947,
It's 10.3.
is 10.3.
Yeah, it's non-conforming.
It's non-conforming.
But I'm honestly a little puzzled because there's a bylaw provision that says if you have a non-conforming structure,
Right.
you can expand it as long as, of right,
Yes.
as long as the additions are
I agree.
conforming.
What happened, and this is, and I've talked to Daphne for hours, I've talked to Dave Roche for hours. By attaching it, it makes the house now a setback at 10.1. The primary home is now changing the definition. It changes the definition of the primary home setback to 10.1, which is non-conforming.
Okay, so part of the construction is going to be attached to the house,
Yes, yes.
Okay,
So
so
the
you're
roof
not-
is
you're
now
not-
going to attach to the mudroom
but in the back you're attaching.
from the backyard. And we did that also with the, under the direction and guidance of Mr. Roche and Daphne to avoid a different kind of nonconformity.
Further
It's
encroaching, yeah.
exactly. So I was working with the building department and with Daphne to find the most direct way to do this project with asking you the minimal amount of relief.
Well, it seems pretty technical that you're, just because you're attaching, but if that's what the building inspector wants, we'll deal with it.
He seemed to
It was
understand.
a different issue, I think. I think the building inspector had a couple of issues. One of them, I think, was that the garage with the detached structure is too close to the house.
Yeah,
And
but
it's-
that
and it's not-
exists and it's not conforming.
Right,
Right.
I understand it, but by
It's,
attaching the
he said
garage to the house,
he had never seen a garage like ours before.
you'll
right?
eliminate that nonconformity because it will now be one building.
Yeah. So we've been working with him to find a solution and Daphne. And
Okay,
so,
Well, I'm glad that the roof is 12 feet back from the sideline. I think it's appropriate.
oh, sure. And
So that was what the building inspector was looking for. So that seems to make sense. All seems to make sense.
And I just want to say, I'm a town meeting member for over 8 years, and I was here when we talked about the reason why we increased those side setbacks, and I'm fully supportive of that in terms of keeping kind of the character of the neighborhoods as they are. I don't think, however, that the intent of those articles that were passed were to prevent someone like us to do this kind of a project. So that's just one argument I wanted to
whatever.
Expressed to you.
There are a lot of people who have non-conforming houses and
right.
they're stuck coming for
And they're
special
stuck coming
permits.
through. Sure.
If they want to make a structural change.
Right.
All right, do we have anyone from the public that wants to be heard on this?
I have my neighbor who is my side setback neighbor.
Okay. Sure.
She can,
Yeah, oh yeah, I
This
know.
is-
Is
this
that
is
big
20
one working?
Okay. I've actually been on Karen's patio. I'm next, I'm at 26 Grosvenor Road, so I'm her neighbor that can see over the fence into the patio and where it's going to be built. And you can't see it from my yard. It's not going to, change the view. And you can't see it from the street, but it provides that open space that Karen and her family have been looking to do. I think it doesn't change the character of how her house relates to my house or the front street.
So you support it?
Yes,
Okay.
definitely.
Would you tell us your name? please?
Sure. My first name is Faith, Faith, and the last name is Chrisley, Crisley.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else from the public? The planning board had no comment. The Public Works Department says you need to come up with a
Stormwater,
modified set of plans to pull a building
stormwater,
permit.
yeah.
and also ultimately comply with town's new stormwater, which, as I mentioned to the prior people, I think essentially means you have to have a dry well that captures the runoff from the house.
I can work with that department to ask questions specifically.
Yes. Yeah, and, you know, I don't know if you have an engineer working on this, but
We have an architect.
Yeah.
We have a
they ought
plot survey.
to be familiar with it. And I'm not seeing any comments from the police or fire or health department. All right. So anyone on the board have a question?
Just to comment, I think it's appropriate in light of where the roof is, that you're not creating a new nonconformity. I think for the record that you probably need to establish that the house is lawfully pre-existing, and then according to your materials, you submitted that it was built in 1947 and maintained this way throughout.
Correct.
And at least we've been working with the theory that there was no side setback requirement until 1953.
We think we found it, but it's 10 feet. Yeah.
She had the original plan.
I have the original photo of the home.
There's nothing that had so much historic background. She really did great work. She even found historic photos.
Nice picture of the house,
Of the garage.
I'm most
From
proud
the-
of the dog in the window.
It is very strange, the way the garage is built so
It's
close to
very
the house and
strange.
not
It's
attached.
very strange.
But
You know, the picture you submitted.
It actually
has
had a
picture of
door.
car.
Oh, in the car,
That must
yeah.
have been 19, who knows what, 19.
And
a
it was
long time
before
ago.
my neighbor's home was built too. Also, there's a picture of my 40 Grosvenor Road who had a similar situation where she connected her garage to her home via a breezeway. And she told me that she was granted by a special permit in the 70s or 80s, I believe.
Sure. So,
favor.
any questions? Someone make a motion, please?
Peter, so you want to make the motion? If not, okay.
Sure. I move that the board issue a special permit under sections 1.4.6, 4.2.1, and 7.5.2 to allow the change, extension, alteration, and enlargement of the lawful pre-existing non-conforming building at 34 Grosvenor Road, associated with the addition of a mudroom and covered back patio to a detached two-car garage, as shown on the plan submitted to the board.
Second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good luck. Sorry, that there's so much trouble for minor.
It's been an education.
Yeah, even the building inspectors, when they go out, they all, like, how, it was,
We've thought about what to do back there for many, many years and wanted to do it very minimally.
you stumped a lot of people except Dave Rich. Let's just say, it was a stumper.
Yeah,
All right, thank you. Well done.
Thank you.
Nice present.
Thank you.
All right, so case number 3, and Ms. Berardi will sit on this with Howard and me, 68 Highland Avenue. No Song LLC applicant has made application to the Board of Appeals for a special permit seeking a waiver of strict adherence to the parking requirements and design requirements for the alteration of a lawful pre-existing non-conforming parking lot pursuant to sections 5.1.2, 5.1.3, 5.1.1.5, 1.4.6, 7.5.2, and any other applicable sections of the bylaws associated with the location of the showroom for the Frank Webb Home, a bath kitchen and lighting business. The property is at 68 Highland Avenue in the Highland Commercial 128 District. Welcome.
Feel free to remove that bottle. Sorry about that.
Fine. Why don't you introduce yourselves and explain, we're struggling kind of with these plans that come over the internet, so it's a little hard to kind of figure it all out. It looks like we have a little bigger one here.
All right, so thanks, Mr. Chair. I'm Sean McCormick, for the record, from Davis Mall and DeAugustine at 1 Boston Place in Boston. We're here on behalf of the applicant and owner, which is No Song LLC. I have Jamie Anderson with me, who's the construction manager for the project, and Steve Stupinski, who's the project engineer. So essentially, sort of big picture, we're looking for a special permit for a waiver of strict adherence to the off-street parking requirements. The main thing that's motivating this is the MassDOT improvements to Highland Ave, which I'm sure everyone's familiar with. And as a practical matter, when the road gets widened, we're going to lose at least one spot and possibly two. So they're sort of taking the opportunity to redesign the parking. I think it gets a better parking result, but the result is a reduction by 2. So the use here, just for some background, is the Frank Webb home is going to be relocating from one spot on Highland to a new spot. And
It's really not a change of use. It was a tile
that's right.
place before. It was kind of retail.
That's right. So the tile, the tile place had, I think 18 parking spots. A couple of them were tandem. One is real close to Highland, which is, of arguable compliance. And so the plan here is to move them around a little bit, eliminate the tandem parking, reduce the number of parking spaces that would require backing out onto Riverside. No more parking on the Highland Ave side. And, we are very confident that the proposed 16 parking spaces is more than adequate for the actual use. We've got a pretty good handle on our customer traffic because we're just down the street now. We've been in operation, so we sort of know what the volume is. And
What does the bylaw require based upon the square footage?
well, based on the square footage of the retail space on the first floor, it would be 16.
1.6.
Yes. So when you add in some of the accessory uses in the basement, we get to 24. And there's a little bit of question whether the basement requires those parking spaces because this isn't like a mixed use situation. It's really just, there's a break room for the employees, that kind of thing. So the square footage in the basement isn't adding to the retail use. It's not adding to customers or employees. But I think the strict conservative approach is 24 spaces, and the liberal approach would be 16.
And how do we know that 16 works? Which has always been our concern, not so much what the bylaw says, but
Sure.
as a practical matter, will it work?
Sure. So as a practical matter, the way the Frank Webb home sort of business works is it's for the most part, it's not people showing up and buying things. It's showing up and ordering things. They do a lot of customers by appointment. It's not a like high traffic business. I think we looked at some numbers from May, and I wrote this down. We had, I think on average, we were looking at 16.8 or 17 visits over the course of a whole day. And I think the way that breaks down is it's rare to have more than 4 customer groups, like think couples, coming in at one time. It's not the type of business where you can self-serve. You really need to be attended to by one of the employees. And there are, I believe, 5 employees on a shift.
When this is all done, I take it probably will not comply with our design requirements, but can you just call out for us where it might not comply?
Sure.
Probably set back from the street.
Sure. So I'm going to defer to our engineer on the technical aspects. Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For your record, my name is Steve Stupinski from Merrimack Engineering. I think if you look at the condition that's there now or that's operated at the title shop. All of the spaces, including the tandems, were back-out spaces onto Riverside. Some of them complied dimensionally. Most of them did not. All of the spaces that we have on the plan complied dimensionally with the bylaw, with the exception of maybe 2 on height of the building to the property line. But if you consider to the actual travelway or the area that's used for a parking lot, then it would comply. We have proposed 5 parking spaces that were formerly back-out spaces onto Riverside Street. And in lieu of that, we've redesigned the parking lot so that we have those 5 spaces no longer back out directly into Riverside. There would be a 24-foot wide aisle. So the spaces could pull into the site and then park perpendicular to Highland Avenue. So that's fully compliant with the traffic aisle and also the dimensional requirements of the parking spaces.
The traffic's coming from Highland Avenue and exiting onto Highland Avenue.
No. Well, now,
What's being proposed? Because it's no longer on the River Street side.
Right, there are 5 parking spaces that are currently back out onto Riverside. And those are going to be made to be perpendicular to Highland. So there'll be a driveway, you would drive in and turn into the space.
yeah,
and then pull out.
where will you enter the parking lot? Maybe, can you show us on the plan?
Sure. This is the proposed, right? Currently, all of these spaces back out on the Riverside. Now there'll be a driveway coming in off the Riverside, and parking will be parallel to Riverside instead of perpendicular to Riverside, so it's perpendicular to Highland. And that parking would be segregated from the backouts onto Riverside with a walkway that will come down to tie into the existing sidewalk. And we've located the handicap space closest to the front entrance as well. So this would anticipate this would be not necessarily, but should be, but it's usually the least highest volume. It's closest to the intersection.
So will everyone come in off Riverside and circle around, or is there another entrance off Highland Terrace?
No, it's 24 foot and then 19 and a half by 9. So this complies with your dimensional requirement for the traffic.
I'm sorry, but
aisle.
aren't there other spaces over on the Highland Terrace side, on the other side of the building?
Yes, there are backout spaces.
Those
here.
are still backout spaces?
Those
on
are
the
still
Highland
back
Terrace?
out. Yeah, we can't, there's no way to dimensionally create the driveway and make the turn.
Is there any parking in front of the building?
No, there currently is parking in front of the building, and the DOT project is going to eliminate the parking in the front as well as a portion of the side where there is currently parking.
Okay, so even with that taking, you can keep 16 spaces
Yes,
that are all
it's-
dimensionally compliant?
Yes,
Yeah.
which was difficult, but
All right, so you don't meet the setback requirements, you don't meet the landscaping requirements. I
with the
presume you don't
exception-
have bicycle racks.
Right.
What about lighting?
well, I would say we meet the dimensional requirement for the drive-in parking lot in that we have the 5-foot landscaping buffer to the abutter.
Yeah, but not on the Highland Terrace side.
Correct, not on Highland Terrace, that's correct. In terms of the bike racks, that's part of the MDOT project. In the overall corridor, it's being provided, so we're not really providing them here.
It's okay, and there were none there before. And what about, another one of the design requirements has to do with lighting, which we always have a hard time figuring it out. But
Right.
we just want to make sure people will be safe at night.
Right, the lighting will be with wall packs, I think.
Yeah, I sent Jamie Anderson from Greenwood Construction for the record. There's two doors to the rear of the building. I can point those out real quick. To the rear of it, here and here, there's two existing doors that we're going to maintain. Those are primarily egress only and for employees. And there'll be some lighting here in the soffit, an illuminated sign.
Will there be any illumination in that back parking lot off Highland Terrace?
We currently don't have any, no.
How about loading?
So as far as loading, Webb has about 2 deliveries a week they expect to stock the building. It's really, when I say stock the building, they're just bringing product that's a customer's ordered. There'd be parking here, coming in this back entry here. What they really are, their goal is to, their plumbing HVAC supply. So their goal is to have the customers place the order and then allow from free shipping from their new location, like Bridgewater, formerly Brockton. They would ship it directly to the job site or to the home in this case. So not a lot.
So not much pickup. What about a dumpster? That's always been a contention with the neighborhood.
Yep.
To have not to have an unsightly dumpster.
Yeah, right now there's, as it exists today, there's a hashed out area with a dumpster right here close to the back of the building. Our intent was to do like a PVC enclosed fenced. And again, Webb's needs really aren't, they don't have any, aside from day-to-day lunch type waste. They're not a lot of cardboard. They'd expressed that they could go down to the tote type if they needed to. Currently, right now at 100, I believe they have about a 2-yard container, and it's very similar. It's in a PVC enclosure. In that case, it's tucked up against the building, but we're hoping to utilize this corner, and that would be the access to get out there. So.
Okay. So anyone on the board have a question?
No, I think you've done a good job to present it, and that they're in the business of bath, kitchen, and lighting business.
Okay, before I turn this over to the public, let me just go through whatever comments we have from the town boards. Planning board had no comment. And as if I recall correctly, somebody will correct me wrong if I'm not, we have no comments from police and fire or health department on this?
The police and fire both weighed in. Fire had no concerns. And then the police, they responded to traffic concerns that were brought in by the public, and they had no concerns when they looked at that. The police had no concerns with this application.
All right, so we did have some emails from Mr. Ryan. I don't know if he's here. Wants to speak. If not, I'll try to summarize. What he said, it was addressed to Daphne, and he says basically he supports the occupancy by Webb. He thinks that the parking lot and building have become a bit of an eyesore. His main concern is traffic and parking for the new building. It's a tough intersection, which we all know. And to make sure that it's a safe environment, and if there's a dumpster, to make sure that it's aesthetically pleasing. I think that summarizes his comments. So, see Mr. Degosian here. Did you want to be heard on this?
Yes.
Use the microphone, please. Sure.
John Nagosian. I represent the company that owns a lot of properties on that Highland Terrace. And I would just like to say a couple of things. We don't have a copy web company. Could you explain to me where the actual dumpster is?
Can you see the plan?
I didn't get a copy.
Well, I didn't either, but he just showed it here. Maybe you couldn't see it from where you were sitting. See, the dumpster is in the little red corner.
I know exactly where it is, and that's what I'm asking you. It's kind of like a setup question. It looks like to me, it's right where the residents live. And then, have you ever been?
Why don't you go back to that?
Your parking lot now is a Panera's Bread. Panera Bread wanted to put the dumpster abutting the residents. Mo Handle said that won't happen. The dumpster will go in the middle of the parking lot and barricade it, and they'll keep it clean. Why should the residents have to put up with the dumpster? Everyone eats lunch, throws their food and whatever. But let me tell you, that's what Mo did for Panera Bread and the residents. But when FW Web moved in, you know what they did? They put up a fence without permission and put a dumpster in there. And the dumpster comes at 5 o'clock in the morning and wakes up the residents. We've complained. Okay?
About Web?
About Web. They have an illegal dumpster at the Panera Bread facility. Now, here they are moving into here, which we think is great, but we don't want your dumpster. We're the residents who live here. We don't want your dumpster. We want you to move in. Put the dumpster someplace else. Why should it go against where the residents live? We don't want the rodents going into it. Everyone eats lunch and it gets thrown away. That's one question I have. The second one is the downstairs going to be used for anything other than storage?
I think they already said it's going to be used for an employee breakout room, but let them answer more completely.
Okay, so that's employee break, but at any time, is it going to become a FW Web plumbing supply downstairs, where plumbers will come, park, and then go downstairs? Like in the future? That's all I'm asking.
I can reply to that.
Yeah, sure, please. Yes.
Yeah, the intent is that, well, the attractiveness to the building, obviously, right now they lease the property at 100 Highland. So the intent was to buy this property. So I can't speak to the dumpster on the existing buildings. I haven't worked on that project at all. But what they're planning to do is put a little bit of employee space down in the basement because it's extra space at this place and they can display on the first floor. So the intent is not to have any contractors or anyone down there. My architect wouldn't allow that.
So it's storage and employee breakout,
At the end of the day, what's
not display.
Correct.
Right. There's no display, there's no retail use in the basement. There's a break room. I think the manager has a desk. There's a janitor's sink. That's the use of the basement. There's no retail operation going on in the basement.
So you confused me a little.
Well-
Because you're complaining about their current location, not this location.
No.
About the
current
dumpster?
location, they stuffed an illegal dumpster abutting a property I represent. And the new facility, they have the dumpster abutting a property I represent again. And I can just tell you right now, I'm not for it. And we're not gonna take the dumpster from the last place didn't have it. The residents on those streets,
Where's the dumpster currently?
it's abutting 3 properties, right there. When Alfresco's was trying to move in there, they were gonna put the dumpster inside the building, open doors, come out, remove it, and then put it back in. They withdrew and never, that was
There were other
before the
issues.
tile, before the
There
tile.
are other issues, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I hear you and we'll see what they can do, but I do note that this is not a food service.
No, I know.
This is not going to be the kind of trash that would be unusually difficult.
Absolutely.
It's going to be mostly
But
paper.
they still have, where they are now, they haven't shown good use of it anyways, okay? They illegally put in a dumpster, and the dumpster guy comes at 5 o'clock in the morning. The residents call up and complain, you know?
Well, okay, we certainly can make a condition about the dumpster will be emptied after some hour. What hour would be reasonable for them to deal with the dumpster? 7?
Well, how many times a week do you get the dumpster?
I can't speak to that. I can't, it's probably about a 2-yarder at this point. I can't imagine it's more than once a week.
You know, if it's a 2-yarder, I don't see why you can't put it in the other corner. The guy can roll it out and dump it.
Let's talk about time. What time?
Well, I would say after 8 o'clock.
After 8 a.m.? Okay.
Right, dumpster 8 o'clock, that would be,
Okay.
you know, fine.
All right. Well, so let's let them respond. I think part of the problem is if they move it somewhere else, so they may lose a parking space. I mean, let them respond.
I don't have any problem. I don't think they need all the spaces anyways. Look at another space and let them move the dumpster. We're for it. I think you can speak to some of the other residents. I think they'd be for it too.
Okay. Let's hear from any of the other residents who want to speak, and then we'll give them a chance to respond. Sure, please. Hello.
Hello, my name's Elizabeth Caponia. I live on Highland Terrace, and I'm a town meeting member. And my main concern, because there's residences from Riverside Street and Highland Terrace that are literally feet away, a few feet away, maybe 6 feet away from that, what the proposed business is to be. The dumpster issue is very important because I do hear that dumpster being emptied at 5 or 5:30 in the morning. And as much as you complain, sometimes it stops and then it starts up again. So I know that at Panera Bread, they agreed, I believe it's either 9 a.m. or 9:30 a.m. before the dumpster, their official big dumpster that's enclosed in the middle of the parking lot. It's only 9 or 9:30 a.m. that they start servicing the dumpster. So the way I feel, maybe from 9 p.m. to 9 a.m., the dumpster shouldn't be serviced. That way, that gives people a little bit more peace and quiet, because also sometimes you're already up in the morning, but you don't really want to hear a dumpster being serviced when it's maybe one house away. You're one house away or right up against it. This is how, and also not at all on holidays, because sometimes, if, let's say they do it every Tuesday, and then Tuesday's a holiday, and boom, you get woken up with that. So not at all on holidays. The other issue is lighting spillover, because I know from the Panera Bread parking lot, there's these very high intensity LED lights that sometimes stay on way past 11 o'clock, sometimes midnight. And that can cause an uncomfortable situation with bedrooms.
Well, I think they already described the lights they're going to put in, and they're not lights that are going to be spilling over. They're not spotlights.
Okay, very good, very good. And so I think this is the most important for us. And I think that the Frank Weber home is a very good fit for where it used to be the tile store. I'm really happy that they're moving in. We just need to make sure that these little things are agreed upon, and everybody will be happy. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Ms. Epstein?
Hi, my name is Janice Epstein. I live on Highland Terrace, and I'm also a town meeting member. First of all, I want to say the neighbors are very happy that Frank Webb is coming into that building. We know that business, and it's a very good fit for that building. I also wanted to say that more of the neighbors would have been here, and I understand there just wasn't enough time of notice to do a Zoom or whatever, but people just are used to Zooming and couldn't get here. But I just wanted to mention that there would have been more people here. The neighbors have also been working with MassDOT about the Highland Avenue expansion. And they actually put out a block the box in front of Highland Terrace to kind of help the problem with traffic. So we're just concerned as well, as you do construction, one of my questions is, do you have plans to work with MassDOT, find out their schedule so that you could coordinate what you need to have done and what they're doing with, Eversource trucks coming in, and they've been parking in that, parking lot area. So why don't I ask that question first?
I can speak to that. We haven't had direct conversation. I know that, Steve, you had reached out to them initially to coordinate the plans and the tie-in of the curb line, the new proposed, but we certainly can approach them and get an understanding. I know each time I visited the building, there's been some utility trucks parked in there or someone staging for the, for the road construction project. So we're certainly going to have to talk about that when we do our construction. So, yep, the intent is to help to coordinate with that effort.
James, just so I'm correct, there's no major construction contemplated, right? Is that, I know major is a little fuzzy.
Yep, the major structure, the roof, the 3 of the exterior walls are going to be intact. What we're going to do is we're going to recreate the front entry, new glass. Right now there's a perpendicular feature that runs perpendicular to Highland. We're going to take that off and we're going to make a new roof feature above the entry, a new peak, I guess we'll call it, to show a little bit of the branding, which we've presented to the design review board. And I guess to the point is there's some facade work in the front, which we've reviewed with the design review board, but there's no major structural work per se.
As far as MDOT, we've coordinated our plans with theirs so that our sidewalk grades, alignments, all match the MDOT construction drawings that they're proposing. So there has been some coordination effort in that regard.
All right. Ms. Epstein?
Hard to hear. I know that they're taking away the front, so also coordinating the new bike lane and sidewalk that's going to go around in the front as well as somewhat on the side of your building. So that would cut into your, the parking there while they're doing that, or parking, but I assume you work on that. You have a very large sign now in the Panera, and I'm wondering, are you bringing that sign over or are you getting another sign? Because I know when Mass Tile put up a lot of banners and signs, the DPW came down and told them to take it down, and we'd want to have it fit in with the other, how TD Bank did a small sign and things like that. So I was curious about that.
Yeah, I can speak to that. We did present in front of the design review board for our facade, and then we went back a second time for our signage, and we were approved for 32 square feet, which is the maximum requirement by bylaw. So, and just to elaborate, I believe our sign contractor went and verified the 3 signs that are on the building right now at 100 Highland. And each one of those is 32 square feet. So we're doing 1 on the front entry at this point.
I'm sorry, because he's talking to you. We can't hear back here.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, okay. What he said is that there are currently, I think, 3 signs on their building, but they're only moving 1 of them. And it meets the bylaw requirement. I don't know if they're moving it, but they're going to have 1 sign.
We're going to create 1 new.
They're going to have 1 sign on this
32 square
building.
feet.
It's going to be 32 square feet, which meets the town's sign requirement, and that they have been before the sign bylaw committee that looks at it and approves it.
Okay, thanks. And regarding the dumpster, right now, there's a rickety fence that's kind of on its last leg.
Yeah, they said they're going to put up a new poly fence.
How tall?
Around the enclosure would be 6 feet.
How tall?
6 feet.
And can you describe that fence more? So 6 foot.
Vinyl, solid vinyl, white.
So that'll be around the dumpster, but you're going to leave the fence that's still there, that's not, it looks like it's on its last leg, sort of going around the parking lot. And
Yeah,
then you
there-
also talked about, had in your plans, 4-foot arborvitae, which I don't think that's going to cover anything.
So a majority of the fence that's existing there, the wood stockade fence, is on the residential property. So our intent is not to touch that, but on our property, we're going to do arborvitaes around the corner. I guess I can.
Yeah, they show some landscaping. I don't know if you can see their plan, but they're going to landscape towards the residences.
I saw it online.
Your eyes are better than mine if you can read it online.
You make it big. Well,
So this fence currently here, that is on that's not on our property here, we're not going to plan to touch. The intent is to put arborvitaes here to create a buffer. There is one fence here, there's this, I think it's about 12 feet of fence or so, that we'll have to talk to the neighbors about because it's partially on the new 68 Highland and part of it goes off.
and if you move the dumpster to the end of the street, that it wouldn't work there?
You're saying here?
Yes, there, that's be away from being right next to the two families.
Okay. Let's see what other issues we have, and then we'll deal with where they put the dumpster.
Are you going to maintain that fence or fix it?
Well, it's not their fence. He said it's on the residential property. So it's not their fence to fix or change or take down.
Okay. Well, maybe it would make it easier if you did put,
Well,
Moving back to the neighborhood and
they're
put a
proposing to put in an
fence.
arborvitae, which I would think is a lot more attractive than a fence.
well, what's 4 feet here? And then you have to wonder, hope that they don't die. I'm just saying, if you, a good
They're
solid.
not going to want to have them die. I mean, they want to have a good-looking property that's serving the public.
I know. I'm just saying, with plants, you hope they do well, but with fences, they will last, a decade or so. There is a sign on Highland Terrace that says no parking from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. So just to be aware, so that if people needed more space to park, they could not park at the building. They'd have to go into the neighborhood. So it's just to think about, to make sure they have enough. Thank you.
Let's just see if there's anyone else. Is there anyone else who wants to speak? All right, welcome back.
I propose that we give them one more benefit of a parking spot, move the dumpster off of the residence, put it in one of the parking spots, and they would get more space if you could put a fence up and eliminate half of the trees on one side, so to block it from the residents. There's 3 properties. There's 8 families abutting that in that corner where the dumpster is. They don't want that. So if you could,
Well, fine, we understand your point. Let's let them.
Okay.
So what do you think? Could you live with keeping the dumpster where it is now to keep it away from the people?
Mr. Chairman, I would say with all due respect to the comment, dumpster access is a big issue. It's hard for me to explain it, but there's no place on this site other than this location that has the turning radius and the geometry that would be such that a truck could come in and service this dumpster. Every place else, they're going to have to block the street or they just can't make the turn. The site is not big enough. This is the only location the truck.
But what are they doing now with it next to the building?
They're where it is now is not screened. It's not enclosed. It's open. So the truck can come in at a diagonal and pick up the dumpster and put the dumpster down wherever it's easiest for him, the trucker. And that's where they leave it. But if you want a dumpster to be screened in an enclosure that complies with Board of Health regulations and visually is screened so that you don't see it and works efficiently to prevent papers and other trash from blowing out of it in the event that somebody leaves the top open, which does happen. And this containment structure will contain it. Structurally, it's adequate, so if it gets bumped by a vehicle, it won't disturb the fence because there are bollards there to protect it. And this is the only location that will work geometrically for the servicing truck. And if there was another location, I would tell you that, but I'm gonna tell you the truth as to where it is and why it is there. And if you don't want the dumpster screened, then I would say the option would be to have an unscreened open dumpster like you have now. And you could put it in the area that we have it as access, because then the truck could come before the people park and use the spaces and drive in at a diagonal to get it, just like they do now. But if you want something that's more aesthetically pleasing, more efficient, more code conform, fully code conforming, then this would be the location for it, with all due respect. And I think the suggestion that somebody made regarding 8 o'clock or a 9 o'clock limitation in terms of the morning service is certainly something that the board would consider conditioning to address the concerns of the neighborhood.
Mr. Negosian's up again.
Yes.
So what he's saying is, if they were to move it back near the building, it would have to be open. And instead, they're planning to do something that they think would be relatively aesthetically
He's
pleasing.
offering us the ability to close it and live with it. So I'm sorry, is this Mr. Webb here? I didn't get your name.
He's the
the
My name
engineer?
is Steve Stupinski.
Oh, are you the engineer?
I am.
Yes.
Oh, that's wonderful, because it's not rocket science. There's 5 parking spots there. All you have to do is switch them to the opposite side. See these right here? Let me count. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then access. If you put them against the fence, this would now be open, and you can put the dumpster there. I have to apologize. That's simple. And we could close it in, and the 8 families that live there wouldn't have to live with it. And I don't think I'm asking for too much from the board. I mean, it would have been really simple if we just did that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wants to make a comment? Is there any? The board?
Well, it seems like the broad areas of consensus are that the neighbors are supportive. It sounds like a good idea. It's an existing commercial business nearby. That the number of parking seems appropriate. Is it 16 total? That and the spaces that they're creating seem to be more conforming in large part. That the basement use is for apparently employee use and some storage, and not for retail displays. You know, and according to the traffic studies, according to this gentleman's testimony, that's 17 visits a day. And again, there's no neighborhood opposition. So it seems like the usage is perfect. So I think the only issue in front of us is the location of the dumpster. And not that familiar with the space. So maybe, sir, the engineer, can you just elaborate, respond to what we're saying about moving it, and just give us some guidance there?
If the dumpster was located in the area of the access, the only way.
So is that access for retail customers or access?
No, it's access to it from the parking lot.
Yeah, retail customers are all coming in the Highland Avenue side.
They would come in on this walkway here.
So who's the access for?
Access to the dumpster from the building and access for emergency services into the building at this location. So this is unmarked, unparked, access in for emergency services and for employees to come in and out.
Okay, and is there actually a door there, or was it on the side?
No.
Is the door on the side or in
The door is on the side, yes, right here.
Okay, so I don't understand, employees aren't going to be,
Right, and there's a door over here, so theoretically, come that way. So
There's a fence blocking that, so they can't cross.
this,
Right there, there's a fence.
this area, the fence is on the adjacent residential property.
Yeah, you can't cut through.
yeah, let them finish, please.
So if the dumpster was located here, the only way to service it would be diagonally like this, which would inhibit the ability to park. So if the dumpster was serviced after the store closed, for example, 11 o'clock at night or 1 in the morning, then it wouldn't be an issue because the truck can come in.
We don't want that.
But if the dumpster's being serviced during the day, then the only place that it could come in to access the dumpster would be directly in, either the front or the back of
Well, could you make the driveway closer to Highland Avenue there in the building so that there was a straight shot in from Riverside? Instead of having the access at the top, have it down parallel with the building, and then the dumpster could be serviced directly? Yeah, right
So we
there.
would flip the parking to go that way and have the driveway here.
Yeah,
Right,
that's what I'm
right.
saying.
Yeah, that was what was suggested. That's what,
If you were to flip it,
Yeah.
then you could do that.
Then there could be a direct access
right.
from,
Then
You can come right into the dumpster. Yeah.
if you flip the parking.
is there a particular problem? I mean, any barriers there? I don't think so.
No, I guess the only barrier would be cars parking against the
Yeah.
residential properties.
Yeah, but they ought to be out of the way.
Right, we try to feign away from that.
Right.
So if the board felt that it was more appropriate to do that, then yes, we could flip it.
We like to accommodate the neighbors, so.
But we might want to hear from the rest of the neighbors, because that's a different proposal, having cars coming in and out against the neighboring properties.
No. Right. Their current proposal is that they're going to come in off Riverside, but up near the green
Right, but
space.
they'd be parking against,
They'd be parking.
instead of parking against the
They'll
building.
be parking
they're
facing the
parking
residences
facing
now.
The properties.
Yeah, but with
So I guess the question
with the
is,
landscaping separation.
what do you prefer, a dumpster near the homes or people coming in and out of parking spots?
As residents.
I'm speaking for myself.
Well, didn't you say you?
I would prefer the dumpster as far away from the residents. Trust me. And in the dumpster Panera Bread that FW Web put in, that's in a fenced-in area that the guy opens up a gate, wheels it out, and dumps it. It's a lot of work, and they could do that work here too.
Okay, so if you're willing to move the entrance down so it could be a straight shot and put the dumpster there, I think that's what they would prefer, and we'd like to make them happy if we can.
Unless there's anyone else who feels differently.
Steve, I just want
It's
to
only
make
one
sure
person.
that that enclosure size would fit in that vacant, that non-parking spot. And we wouldn't crunch down the rest of the spots.
It would be slightly smaller, but I think we could deal with it.
Would it be enclosed at that point?
Yeah, and they still enclose it, and the pickup guy can go straight in. Yeah,
That's correct.
and then it's away from from some of the houses. All right, thank you. All
Okay,
right,
no, I think that solves the major issue for us. There's more unsolved issues.
I wouldn't mind them not doing the shrubs, but putting a nice vinyl fence up there so that it separates the residents. And I wouldn't mind it, I'm speaking for myself, I wouldn't mind if it was an 8-foot fence to separate the residents from.
okay, whatever. I'm gonna let them do whatever they want. If they feel they want to have vegetation, I think you had to do it. I think it probably looks nice.
I believe the vegetation, I believe, was a design review board
Yeah.
item, and we've already been through the design review board.
Yeah,
Proposing vegetation.
And it also, some landscape area is a parking design requirement, so.
Right, to have some greenery. So I guess the question that came up, and it's a good one, being a gardener myself, is about the watering of that. Would there be sprinklers? How do you envision dealing with the regular watering?
Yeah, the intent would be to have
Irrigation.
strip irrigation there. Yep.
All right. So, Daphne, you want to try and make a motion?
Sure. So I move that the board allow special permit, waiving strict adherence to the parking requirements and design requirements and the alteration of a lawfully pre-existing non-conforming parking lot pursuant to sections 5.1.2, 5.1.3, 5.1.1.5, 1.4.6, 7.5.2, and any other applicable sections of the bylaw associated with the location of the showroom for Frank Webb Home, Bath Kitchen and Lighting business on the property located at 68 Highland Ave. With the,
I think we have
yeah,
some
a few
conditions.
So I think the conditions were that dumpster servicing would happen only after 9 a.m. and prior to 9 p.m.
And no holidays?
and no holidays.
And about the basement space?
And I think are we going to add that as a condition? The basement space cannot be retail?
I would like to see that.
You'd like to see that?
Yeah, because I think it impacts the parking.
Yeah, okay, no retail in basement.
Yeah.
And let's add, there can be no lighting that spills over onto
Onto the
adjacent
property.
properties.
So how are you going to deal with the plan that's submitted is different from what we've talked about?
Yeah, and it'll be subject to submitting a new plan that basically moves the entrance.
Flips the
That moves the entrance down.
As
But-
the engineer has described, okay.
Yeah, yeah. But, we're basically approving 16 spaces as being adequate and the basic design and waiving the other design review requirements.
Right.
They're actually improving it over the way it's been for
Right.
years.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. I think in the past you had some interest to be specific regarding the exact parking waivers and had asked the applicant at one time to submit
Well.
those that he thought better.
Yeah, I'm satisfied.
You more comfortable tonight?
Well, no, I mean, in writing the decision, we can figure out if we want to be specific. I mean, they don't comply with all the landscaping requirements. They don't comply with the setbacks
I
from
think it's a waiver.
the street,
Most.
particularly along, Highland Terrace, because there's no setback from the street. They're not going to have bike racks. They're not going to have trees other than the ones that are along the edge. I mean,
But they're going to have some more conforming spaces that the engineer
But the
described as
spaces are going to be
wanted.
more conforming and they are going to put in some greenery. So it's an improvement from what we now have.
Agree.
All right? You second that motion?
do.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, well, welcome. Thank you, I hope.
Thank you so much.
And you're going to buy the building? you said?
Yeah, we're gonna, so it's gonna be a owner situation where
Good, because we've had a lot of agony as the current owner has tried to put tenants in there. And,
Bagel place at one time.
a lot of neighborhood. It was once a bagel, well, there
No,
was.
they sucked everything.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I could add, my first in-person
That way we have what was presented, and then so we'll have it in
Yeah,
revision.
and let me explain, because the legislature couldn't act to deal with this in time. We had a 48-hour period, and we had to give notice whether it would be on Zoom or in person.
Well, Steve, you haven't lost the stride. 17
So,
years.
you know, whatever. Oh, well, thank you.
Try.
We try.
Take care.
Is that mine? I keep losing mine.
We can share this.
Is that my agenda?
I think not, but I'll have to share it with Kelsey.
All right, so, and I'll give it back to you. All right, so we're now at our last case, although board members don't run away because we want to talk about the application form and the rules again before we leave. But 68 Wilshire Park, Adam Jacob Pays and Liette Rosen applicants have made application to the Board of Appeals for a variance pursuant to section 7.5.3 and/or MGL 40A section 10 from applicable minimum side yard setback requirements of sections 4.2.1 of the bylaw, a special permit pursuant to section 1.4.6 of the zoning bylaw for the change, extension, alteration, and enlargement of a lawful pre-existing non-conforming structure. And 3, an interpretation amendment to a prior variance dated June 27, 1984, and any other applicable sections of the bylaw associated with the construction of additions and a new deck to an existing residence. The property is at 68 Wilshire Park in the Single Residence B District. Mr. Genta.
Mr. Chairman, good evening, members of the board. My name is George Genta Jr., appearing here this evening on behalf of the applicants, Adam Peace and Liette Rosen. Adam is here with me this evening, along with Clay Smook, who's the architect on the project. So, as indicated, this is an application with respect to 68 Wilshire Park. This is a residential street that was originally laid out in 1924. It basically has a lot of substandard sort of smaller lots, and this one is no exception. The property is identified or shown as parcel 47 on assessor's map number 31. It currently contains approximately 7,622 square feet of land area, along with 67 feet of frontage on Wilshire Park. As indicated, the lot was created initially in 1924. It was slightly changed with a little sort of bump out on the side in 1962 with an A&R plan that was signed by the then planning board. And it has been occupied by a single family residence, looks like since 1928. At least that's what the assessors tell us. Now, so originally the house, there was a single family house built there in 1928. And then in 1984, the single family house was expanded. In particular, there was an addition that was added off the left side as you look at it from the front, an addition added to the rear, and there was a deck added to sort of the right rear corner. Now, the addition that was put on the left side of the building was built roughly 6 feet from the left sideline. So, of course, in order to do that in 1984, that required some zoning relief. And in particular, it required a variance. And wonders of wonders, the Board of Appeals in 1984 actually granted a variance. This is the first one I've come across like this, so it was quite a surprise, pleasant surprise. And so basically, the board in 1984 looked at this property, and they found that based on the narrowness of the lot and the severe slope that was immediately behind the existing house, that those two factors created physical conditions along with the interior arrangement of the house that formed a substantial hardship with respect to adding onto the house. So because of the severe slope in the back of the house, you really couldn't go back very far from where the house was. And in fact, they went back a few feet as far as they really kind of could to almost the top of the slope. And so they had to expand out to the side in order to put a garage on. So the board in 1984 granted that variance and approved the construction. Building permit was subsequently issued. The additions were put on, the deck was put on, and we moved forward till today. So somewhat recently, Adam and Liette purchased the property. They now live there with their family. They have one child now, but they're both from large families, so they hope they have more kids. As a part of that, they want some more living space. And in particular, they'd like to have sort of an open family room that would be good for a family, a large family. So with that in mind, they are proposing to make a couple of different changes to the house. First, they're proposing to expand the living space above the garage on the left side. This is the garage that was added pursuant to the variance. The expansion of the living space on the left side of the house really is nothing more than the addition of a dormer in the back and a dormer in the front. So the expansion there is within the footprint of what was authorized by the variance. It's within essentially the box. It is not any closer to the sideline than the existing structure. So therefore, we would ask with respect to that expansion that the board interpret the variance such that this is within the four corners of the variance, much like the board has done for reconstructions. So for example, most recently was 460 Central Avenue. Before that was, I think, 118 Hillside Avenue. And years before that was, I think, 80 and 82 Marshall Street. Second, the proposal is to add a new addition off the right rear corner. This proposed addition is in exactly the same location as the deck and the attached landing and stairs. So it's not any closer to the property line than the existing deck, landing, and stairs, and it's within that footprint. Because of that, that work requires a special permit, and we've asked that the board issue a special permit to alter, enlarge, change, and I'm forgetting the fourth one, but basically make the addition to change the nature of the nonconformity.
So right now there's a deck, and in that same space, you want to put enclosed living space.
Yes, and I'll come back to that in a minute to talk about that a little bit further. Because I also want to touch on, in the initial application, the initial proposal, there was a new deck that was proposed for the right side of the house that was in close proximity to the sideline. After input from the building commissioner and taking a look at it, that part has been changed. So now the original deck that was proposed is gone, and there's a new deck now that's basically in the center of the house. A deck off the back is much more doable because of the fact that you can effectively cantilever. So the slope isn't quite as much doing that versus doing something for an actual house. So, so the deck is sort of out of it. Now, we had initially asked for variance for that deck work, but now that the deck is off the table, we likely do not need the variance at all anymore.
So the deck you plan to do is off the middle of the house. It complies with all setbacks, and so you can do it upright.
Yes, correct. Right. So now getting back to the addition and the pre-existing deck. So in 1984, as a part of all the work that was done following issuance of the variance, the owners then put a deck in the back right corner of the house. That was shown on a plot plan. I provided a copy of that with my memo.
I'm sorry, can you tell us which is the operative plot plan that we should be looking at? Because there are several with your materials.
Sure. And you know what? Let me.
There's one dated June 4th, which seems to be the last one. But June 4th is the operative.
Right. And just in case, it looks like you will probably have them printed out, but we've got extra copies of the plans here just in case, given this, that everything was submitted electronically under the COVID process. So let
I'm
me
sorry
know
to
if-
interrupt you.
Yes, that's right. So it's June 4th, 2021.
And is the deck in violation of side setback?
So this is what I was getting to. So in 1984, the deck was added on, and the deck at the time was set back just over 10 feet from the side property line. In 1984, that was conforming. Since then, the setback has been increased to 12 feet. So now the deck itself is non-conforming as the setback. In addition, the landing and steps, which go even closer to the property line, are also non-conforming. Now, I call them out a little bit separately just because in all likelihood, they were built when the deck was built. They certainly appear to have been built when the deck was built. But they're not shown on the plot plan that shows the deck. So it could also be, some of the board members may remember, there was a time period where generally steps and landings didn't necessarily get treated as structures, but of course now they are treated as structures, and they do have to comply unless they meet the limits in the bylaw and are required by building code. In this case, the landing and steps are not required by building code because the main house has multiple egress points. So you don't have to have egress off the deck. So the deck basically didn't have to have any landing and steps. So as a result, under the current bylaw, they're non-conforming. Now, as indicated, it appears that the landing and steps were built in 1984 at the same time as the deck was built. As a result, even if not actually shown on the plot plan and not covered by the building permit that was issued at the time, under the somewhat recent amendment to 48 Section 7, if they've been there more than 10 years, now they become grandfathered non-conforming for zoning purposes and can be subject to a Section 6 finding and a special permit under 1.4.6 of the local bylaw. Now, the question comes up, well, how do we know that they were built when the deck was built? We don't know that for sure, but we did get a letter. Mr. Pace actually got a letter from one of the former owners. I emailed it to Daphne earlier today. Unfortunately, my computer, when I was working in the office today for the first time in a month, and my computer decided, oh, I have COVID, I don't want to work anymore. So I couldn't print out the letter. If I had forwarded it to Daphne, I can show it to you on my phone or forward it to any of you. But basically, the prior owner of the property, who owned it from 2009 to 2014, provided a letter that basically said that when he bought the property in 2009, the deck was there as well as the landing and steps. So if it was there in 2009, it's been there more than 10 years. So therefore, it falls under 48 Section 7 with respect to the provision turning it into a protected grandfathered nonconformity. So we're proposing, as indicated, to put the addition on that side exactly where the deck and the landing and steps are. And when you look at the plot plan, you can see that you can actually see the steps within the addition
Are you
section.
putting structure where the steps are, or is it just steps?
Yes, the addition is actually right in the footprint.
George, can you show us on this June 21 plan where that is that you're proposing? It says proposed deck, proposed addition on the right side. Can you just sort of give us some color on that?
Sure. All right, so if you see where it says 15.5 proposed addition, that's off to the right. If you follow, there's a little line there. If you follow that line to the left, then it says 7.74. All right, you keep going to the left. If you keep going to the left, then you hit the corner of the new addition. And then if you start going to the back of the property, that's the edge of the new addition. And as you move up the back, you can see there the steps going up to the landing off the existing steps going up to the landing on the deck.
So that area, including, so this is for the proposed addition.
Right.
That is the exact same dimensions, which it looks like a square, as was the previous deck?
Deck, landing, steps, yep, yes. Now, I want to point out.
Is it a one-story addition?
I think it's a two-story addition because there's space going down below.
It's a walkout basement with the first level with a walkout basement below.
So I do want to point out that it's only a part of the addition that technically requires the special permit. Because of this jog in the property line, roughly half of the addition is more than 12 feet from the sideline. It's only once you get past that dog leg, that jog in the property line, that it comes to the 7.8 feet, basically the line of where the steps and landing are now. So that's roughly about an 8-foot length. So as a result, a rough calculation, it's roughly a 17.6 rounded up to 18 square foot section that requires the special permit. And as a side note to this, there's a kind of a quirk in the bylaw. And I was thinking about this when you had the case earlier with the garage and the house. Even though the setback is 12 feet, there's a footnote in the table that basically says that for existing structures that are doing additions, as long as you're not demolishing more than 50% of the frame or envelope, you can build up to 10 feet, even though the setback's 12 feet. So it creates this sort of a funky thing where the setback's 12, but you get to go to 10. So.
But this area is 7.7.
So this is closer, right? This is 7.8. And obviously you can see, this isn't a big addition in terms of square footage. So to have like an 8-foot and then come in 2 feet or a bit more than 2 feet and then go back to 8 feet really kind of breaks up this addition and basically takes away the intended use of it as a family space and makes it, really not usable. So, we looked at some alternatives to try and work around this, but at the end of the day, this is really what makes sense. And if you've viewed the architectural drawings that Clay has done, you can see that it's a quite attractive, quite interesting addition. This is very, very well designed, very, very well done. And so with that, I actually asked maybe Clay if you want to make a couple of comments on it.
Yeah, I actually do. A couple of things. I mean, although it is 2 stories, it's really 1 story with a walkout, and the area that has the walkout it's going to have a base concrete wall for halfway up. So that's the first thing. The second thing is it's really not a grand addition. I think it's about 15 by 15, just to give you a sense of the scale of the addition. And finally, I just wanted to address the grade drop off that you spoke about. Literally, when you walk off the back of the house for about, about 6 feet?
Yeah.
And then it drops off at a precipitous angle. So we did relocate the deck, as you can see, towards the center of the house, shown on the June 4th plan. But as you can imagine, because the grade drops off at the edge of that deck, you're probably about 12 feet of a drop from the edge of that deck, just to give you a sense of scale on this. Now, the plans that you have, does that have the deck, the revised deck in the center, or does it have the deck off to the side?
So we've got perspective 2, perspective 3. Which one were you?
What's the date on your plans?
June 4th, it's in the center.
Oh, it's in the center?
June 7.
No, this one, you have June 7? Okay, great. That shows the deck. And you can see the way the grade is dropping off quite
You look at
substantially.
perspective 2 and 3?
Yes, perspective 2. And you can see the addition where those windows that are in the family room here, they're pretty close to the floor. So what you really have is you have very tall windows and you have transoms above. So you end up with about a 10-foot ceiling in the family room. And then below it is a fitness area that's half is below grade and half is above grade.
All right, so with that, we make the argument that this less than 18 square foot piece of the new addition is not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing non-conforming deck, landing, and stairs. And in fact, by enclosing this space, to some degree, it might actually lessen impacts, because presumably if you have people on the deck outside that's in close proximity to the property line, that noise is likely to carry more versus an enclosed space. And the deck now further away is likely to have less of an impact. I'd also point out that with respect to the property on that side, the back of that house is actually sort of forward of where this addition is. So this is sort of pushed back. It's not sort of adjacent to the house next door. So the back of the house next door is roughly in line with the existing bump out on the house at 68. And then finally, interesting enough, we don't often have this, but you should also have 7 letters of support from people in the neighborhood, 6 of them on Wilshire, and then 1 sort of almost just behind and to the left at 12 Ivy, which is a street that actually comes in off of Great Plain Avenue, but is directly behind this section. So you've got from 30, 36, 52, 68, 69, and 79 Wilshire. All those neighbors all have submitted letters of support, which you should all have.
All right, so the planning board, says that the application, there was no evidence about the nonconformity, and that we ought to carefully examine the source of the nonconformity so it's made clear. At least to my mind, you did, that when the deck was built, it was conforming at 10 feet, and then it became non-conforming by virtue of an increase of the side setback from 10 to 12 feet, right? And the stairs, we don't know, but they've been there for 10 years, and so under the statute are deemed to be non-conforming.
Yes.
The building inspector was not happy with your original plans and he says, I'm not in agreement with using the previous landing and stairs and the right rear as the basis for a variance from setback. But there's a big difference between an open porch compared to basically solid walls. Go ahead.
If I may, I understand his comment, and I think he might be sort of looking forward as to, would this open the door to a lot of other changes? And I will say that one thing in this situation that you don't have generally, maybe in other situations that might come up like this, is that steep drop off in the back. That, basically it's like a 10-foot drop that in fact was...
Yeah, but that doesn't have anything to do with the side setback.
Well, no, but in terms of distinguishing this, for example, this situation, for example, from maybe another one that might come along down the road.
Right, and did we get police and fire comments? None? Health?
I just looked, check, I don't think so.
I don't think we got it.
No, we did not.
I see some people sitting here. Would you like to be heard on this?
It's just very difficult to hear you, Mr. Hunter.
I'm sorry.
I really appreciate that you're the only one we've been able to hear tonight. So if you could just speak up, then we'll know what you're talking about.
Well, we haven't said much yet, but would you like to say something? Go to the microphone,
We're
speak.
sitting here, we're chronologically and historically the oldest people on Village Park. We were here in '84, before that. We got a lot of history here.
Well,
We know everything that you're talking about.
It's a very lovely street.
It certainly is. We've been there 50 years. We could speak easily.
John, there was also a comment from the Conservation Commission that they're going to require to apply for notice of intent
For
this
what?
property. There is wetlands, and so there was an additional comment from the Conservation Commission.
I think when conservation looked at I'm not sure if it was the GIS or the aerial, it looks like there may be some wetlands resource areas within 100 feet of the work area. And so we'll need to look at that and have a wetland expert identify exactly where they are, because the GIS and aerials are only so accurate. They're not exactly accurate. And then if we are within 100 feet, we do have to go to the Conservation Commission. Depending upon where we are within that 100 feet, we would have to go in for a determination of applicability. And then if we're far enough in, we have to go in for a request for an order of conditions.
So we're not going to address that, but you're subject to their jurisdiction if they're within 100 feet of the wetlands.
Right.
Does anyone on the board have?
Well, I have some questions. So that, George, in your application at paragraph 3, that one of the relief that you're seeking tonight is an interpretation and amendment of a prior variance. Is that still the case?
Yes. That's the prior variance for the left side of the house.
Well, let's just look at that. We can look at that together.
Okay. Well, let me say, in the prior cases that you cited, we had variances that allowed incursion into the setback without reference to a plan. This one specifically refers to a plan. And so as far as I'm concerned, the existing variance doesn't work unless you're going to tell me that the plan they refer to includes the changes you want to make, which I take it they don't. So, as far as I'm concerned, if you were going to do this, you'd have to get a new variance, because an amendment to a variance is the same thing. It clearly doesn't fall within the four corners of the existing variance. Even with the liberal interpretation, we've been willing to give it before.
The only thing I would say to that, Mr. Chairman, even though it references a plan, I have to go back again. I thought it just referenced the plot plan.
No, it references a plan.
I think that's it. Okay, is it the decision that's here?
Yeah, the old decision.
Yeah, plan dated May 21st, 1984.
That's the block.
All right, Carmelo Frazzetti, who is the surveyor.
Right.
Right, so in that sense, they're referencing the plot plan, which would establish essentially the box of where the variance is, which is part of why I'm saying that what we're doing is within that box.
But your dormers are not within the box, are they?
They are.
They are.
Well,
So this wasn't built out?
So the only thing that's built out further is just, so there is a new eave line in the front of the garage.
Yeah, I have a lot of trouble understanding. No offense, but I have a lot of trouble making
Yeah,
sense.
so there's basically a new eave over the front, but the actual the dormers themselves are within the box of the structure.
So that, I'm sorry, so are you taking down, I guess I'm a little confused. I assumed that the recipient of the variance built out to the full extent of the box that was permitted. Is that not the case? Dormers can still be within that box? Or are you tearing down part of what's existing so that you can
Well,
put dormers?
they're certainly no closer to the side.
Okay.
They may be compliant.
This is existing, right? This is proposed.
Right.
And if you look at the roof lines, right, you can see that basically the dormers are within the same box as the existing.
It's only in the back of the house that we're dormering up. What we're doing in the front of the house, where can I just hold that up? Okay, there are two different areas. So here's the existing house. Okay, and what we're doing, can I have that pen, just to make it easy, is we are putting a dormer. We're not raising the ridge line. We're putting a dormer like that. Okay, do you see that line? And then the only other little piece we're talking about is I'm going to shade it here. We were talking about doing this little eave line in the front, and that's really to remedy a sort of ugly duckling situation that exists right now. Right now, there is no roof here, so this is a sheer wall that goes all the way up. It doesn't sort of carry that gambrel roof, that Dutch colonial feel all the way across. But we are working within an existing box. We're not raising the ridge line. We're not really affecting the front other than putting a little eave line. And if we had to drop that off, we would. We're really just trying to keep the aesthetic and feel that happens on Wilshire. One of the problems on Wilshire, as you know, is buildings are being taken down and much larger buildings are being built. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to take an existing building that was built in the 20s and make it adaptable for a family of the 21st century without taking the building down. So again, this is an aesthetic thing, and again, we're staying within the box. So I would make the argument that we're staying within the box. I can't talk to the legal.
Well, can we go back, because I'm still hung up on the fact that the variance refers to a plan. How do we know it's a plot plan and not a set of plans and drawings?
So
It's this one right here.
So the one that I included in your packet is, interestingly enough, a plot plan by Carmelo Frazzetti dated May 21st, 1984.
Yeah.
Same surveyor name, same date. Now, I can't tell you for sure this was the plan that the board reviewed and approved, but it certainly is the same surveyor referenced in the decision in the same date.
Well, it has a received stamped too, so.
And we know he was an engineer.
Yes, I know that as a fact.
Yes, yeah, well, yeah, your family.
He was, Mel Frazzetti was a fixture in town for quite a while.
So he wouldn't have been doing architectural plans.
Right, exactly.
Doesn't mean he wouldn't have done it, but we don't.
Yeah,
I will say though, if you look under the existing conditions, the existing condition plan that we have in the back of the booklet, and what happens over that garage, okay, is a master bedroom. So we're not even putting a new use over that. We're merely expanding it.
It really is dimension. The first question, because is there any room under this variance to let you change what's there?
Right.
And when I first read this, I thought nowadays, if we were to grant a variance in every special permit we grant, it makes reference to a specific set of plans. And so when I first read this, I thought that they said, we're giving you a variance to construct something that was described in plans. Now I see it was just a reference to a plot plan describing the area. So I've changed my mind that I think there is some flexibility under this.
And it appears to be, to say that the architect says that the building within the box, they're expanding with the dormers, not building outside that box.
Yes.
Right, except for the portion of the front, which is more aesthetic.
I really hate to ask this question.
Go ahead.
But when I look at the plot plan, it shows a 6-foot setback. The 84 plot plan.
Right.
When I look at the current plot plan, it shows a 5-foot 6-inch setback. Is there an explanation?
I can give you a couple of possible explanations. The first one is, I will tell you, as the son of a surveyor who grew up doing survey work, in my experience, you can get 10 surveyors together and do a survey, and you're probably going to get at least 4 different results, just because one's going to hold one monument, one's going to hold another monument, and all it takes is a little bit, and you can be off by a couple of tenths. A couple of tenths is not a lot, in survey. And I also would say that when Mel did this, he may not have done an actual instrument survey. So that 6 feet may have been sort of 6 feet plus or minus. I will say that by all appearances, it was built pursuant to the plot plan, pursuant to the building permit. So what was built essentially was what was approved. And
In any event, it's been there for a lot more than 10 years, so.
Exactly.
Yeah, but that doesn't matter if it's built under a variance. That statute doesn't cure a variance.
That doesn't cure a variance problem.
No.
Now, the other thing too.
Well, there's also been a lot of changes over the years about the point of measurement, eaves and.
That could be. That's what I was expecting Mr. Junta to.
Well, that was my next possible explanation, was that it used to be, for many years, it was you measure to basically to the foundation or the face of the building, and then it became you had to measure to any closest point, which often was an eave overhang or a lip roof overhang, something like that. So it could be that was to the face, and then you've got another 4 inches, 6 inches to the.
I think we're back measuring to the foundation.
We are now.
Right.
It's been a long, strange trip, but yeah, we're back to the same point.
Okay, so you've made big progress with me. I came in here saying I really think you're going to have to apply for a new variance because this one was specific, but you've convinced me now that they weren't referring to particular plans. And given that leeway in the past, we've been willing to allow minor, in fact, some pretty major building second stories over setback requirements. On the other side, I find it pretty straightforward, which is, we treat a deck as a structure, and maybe these stairs are a structure. And they're there and they're non-conforming. And all the time we give special permits to reconstruct what's an existing non-conformity. So
so the fact that there's a greater intensity, there's a lot more density, there's more space being built, so that you're substantially intensifying. So I know we have.
And I think we have discretion to say, yeah, it's non-conforming, but we think you're making this house just too big and intensifying it, and we're not going to approve it. But, we've approved an awful lot of reconstructions and fill-ins.
What's the added square footage when all of this is done?
Hold on, I have that information. So the existing house, just see what I have here.
Did you want?
I have it's like 240 square feet. 240 square feet we're at.
You said 15 by 15, that's me.
Yeah, that's the lower level. And then we are adding some square footage up on that second floor where we're pushing out a little bit to create that dormer out the back. We're at, the existing house is 2545 and the final house is 2785.
One more time, 2785 is the new, and what's the old?
2545.
So it should be like 240 square feet.
240 square feet.
27 what? Is the new one?
2785 is the new one.
In your.
Yeah, you should have this too. It's the calculation.
The
of the
FAR.
floor area.
Oh, yeah, they are. You comply with all that.
In your package, unless I missed it, you don't have any letters from the direct abutters on either side?
No, so Mr. Pace went and spoke with them and presented the plans with them. We've gotten sort of general, oh, looks good, but they didn't. They didn't.
And
You're gonna close, George, you're gonna close.
Are you a direct abutter to these folks?
I spoke to the others recently as last night, and they said it looked great.
John, there's somebody.
Is there someone here?
I'm still here for my earlier.
Yeah, sure.
My name, for the record, is Karen Hahn. I'm on 34 Grosvenor. I'm just kind of become a zoning board junkie in the last few months, learning all the bylaws and setbacks.
Yeah, you can watch it on video all day.
I know, yes, you can.
And you'd be amazed at how many people do.
I did some homework on my own project as well. My question is, and I don't really have an opinion on what they're doing, other than I'm very supportive in general of trying to make a currently existing home work for families here in Needham, rather than selling off to a builder, knocking things down and building to the 12-foot setback way up high. I'm just curious, and this is just a question, would either granting this or not granting this set any kind of precedent for other residents in Needham if and when they decide to do a similar type of project? Or would they still need to either get this, well, I'm assuming they would all need definitely a special permit, but like in terms of the variance or anything like that, does this open a doorway to some other,
Every case stands on its merit.
Stands on its merits.
And on its own merit. And, this board has really a lot of discretion whenever we're dealing with a special permit or a variance to come to a conclusion one way or another.
Sure.
And the board is often moved by what the neighbors have to say, because we often have to make a finding that this is not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood.
Sure.
And if a lot of neighbors come in here and say we hate it and we think it's going to ruin the neighborhood,
yeah.
That's something we take into consideration. But, there's no direct precedential value. Well,
Yeah,
Mr.
it's
Junto, Mr. Junto will add this
Except for the- if you're a
he'll
lawyer,
add this to
yeah.
his list of cases where we were flexible in the interpretation
You do get lists.
of variance. I mean, the problem we have in Needham is that there are many houses built on undersized lots.
Sure.
And for years, if you knew the right person and your neighbors were in favor of it, you could get a variance to ignore the zoning bylaw, but they changed the law back in 1980. And since then, the town has been pretty consistent of meeting the statutory requirements, and, we very seldom give variances. And it's only when people can meet the statutory requirements. I mean, I can tell you, I thought they were going to need to ask for a variance. I was about to say that it's our policy that the inability to expand a perfectly reasonable house to accommodate your family needs is not the kind of substantial hardship that would support a variance. But they've escaped that by convincing me that the existing variance, let them build this box at this space without specifying exactly what would be in the box.
Yeah. Because I do respect that the town
And-
meeting did a lot of work to ensure that we're not having.
You know,
these
and
fires.
our general attitude is if people want to do something reasonable, if we can find a way within the bylaw and the law to do it, we do it. And it's only when a lot of neighbors show up saying, we think this is a detriment to the neighborhood, that we'll back off. And we've had some cases like that, you know, people wanted to reconstruct, I remember a 3-family house, and a lot of neighbors were upset about it. And in the end, we said, no, we think this is not consistent with the neighborhood, because we heard all these people saying they don't like it and they don't think it belongs there. But here, he has unanimous support. And-
So this board has kind of a leeway in determining, you know, how strict these bylaws.
No,
No.
I mean, we have to make a finding that something is not substantial detriment to the neighborhood.
That's where the discretion comes in.
And so that, you know, what that means is the courts will almost always go with what the zoning board has done, as long as we have some rational basis for what we've done. So that's why I say we have discretion, but we approve 95 or 98% of the cases that come in front of us.
Of the special permits, which,
Yeah.
are not.
I mean, it's unusual for us to turn one down, and that is typically when a lot of people in the neighborhood say, we think this is hurting the neighborhood.
And then also as a result of that public hearing and push and pull, that often the developer applicant revises the plans, cuts back the intrusions, the intensity, and ultimately something real workable comes together.
Right, which is kind of what we did in our situation with going back and forth with the building inspector to kind of make sure things were manageable. I know it's late, but I'm just,
All right.
since I was here, it's just, I find it kind of.
So does anybody else on the board have a question? Peter, do you have more questions to them? You want to make a motion to approve this?
Well, I'm actually struggling a little bit before we get to the motion
Okay,
as
I'm
to the
sorry.
exact relief being sought, because there's 4 requests to.
Let me tell you what I understand it to be. On the left side of the house, where the garage was built with the variance, they want us to say they can put dormers in the front and back and small eaves.
So that's a modification of the existing.
That's
variance.
consistent, that's consistent with the variance. And then on the right side of the house, where there's currently a deck and some stairs, they want us to find that those are legally non-conforming, and under 1.4.6, allow them to alter and reconstruct from a deck and stairs to living. And at one point, there was another deck, but that's no longer an issue.
So
That's going to be.
So the third one, so
compliant.
the third request was to interpretation of the prior variance, so that's being eliminated, that request?
No.
That's John's first.
No, that was the first one. The first one was a variance pursuant to
That
753,
one's
was to change.
That's the one.
That's the one.
So 1 is gone, 3 is in, so 2, 3, and then,
4 is the catch-all.
okay. All right, so I think that gives some backbone for John, so Peter to put together.
Peter can do this.
Yeah.
Just framed the motion. You want to read that back?
Go ahead, make a motion.
All right. I move on the application of Adam Jacob Bates, and Leah Rosen with respect to 68 Wilshire Park, that the board issue a special permit pursuant to section 1.4.6 of the bylaw for the change, extension, alteration, and enlargement of a lawful pre-existing non-conforming structure, that being the deck, stairs, and landing on the right side of the house, to be replaced with a building addition as shown on the plans submitted to the board. I think they're dated June 7th. And secondly, that the board, I guess, issue an interpretation that the addition or modification to the existing building, also shown on those same plans, on the left side of the house, which is subject to a variance dated June 27, 1984, are consistent with that variance as issued in 1984.
Second?
Is that the complete relief, sir?
Yeah.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So this was a lot of complications.
A lot of precedent.
A few moving parts on this one, yes.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good luck, enjoy.
So the final business for the evening is we made another tweak or two to the application form. Moreover, I discovered in reading our rules, which we were amending, that it requires that amendments to the rules be presented at one hearing and then finally voted on at another. So I guess we've changed the rules sent out to you in two ways. Exactly the same change we made about requiring people to visit the building inspector to have a complete application. And secondly, some time ago, we had adopted an amendment saying that if we had a quorum of 2, someone could join remotely if that was authorized under a particular state statute. The state, I guess, the regulation requires that the town would approve this, and so far the town hasn't approved it. But technically, it was an amendment we made to the rules, and we just finally wrote it up so it can be in there. We won't be able to use it unless we go back to the town manager and ask for permission. I think probably we're all set for the next 9 months because the legislature has allowed Zoom meetings through next April. Correct?
22, yeah.
And hence I was speaking with Daphne before, the Needham Times article makes it sounded like the town did not permit it. Have the select board agreed that we can continue to meet remotely? Because the article talked that you needed to have 2 members, including the chairman, present, I believe.
We're talking about.
They're two different things.
Two different things. What was proposed in 2019.
Right.
And that's what's in the statute. That
Which
requires that you need to have a quorum present.
physically present.
Physically
So we're done with.
There is an existing regulation
Right.
that says if you have a quorum present, other people can participate and vote remotely.
Right.
But only if the town manager is authorized.
Okay.
That's separate from the pandemic.
That's totally different from the pandemic zone.
Okay.
And
Now,
they do talk, and they also
No, I
know
understand.
this is that same one, they're talking about it, like everybody's trying to figure this out. Exactly what you're trying to figure out, what's on the statute and what.
Right.
Well, what happened before is in 2019, Daphne had come across this. I brought it up. Everybody says, yeah, that sounds great. So we voted to amend our rules. Then I wrote a letter to the town manager or a memo to the town manager saying, we'd like to get your approval to use this. And I got a whole bunch of
No.
Well, I never got a
Right,
no,
right.
but I got that you're stepping into a sensitive subject, at which point I said, isn't that important? But it ought to be printed in our rules because we adopted this amendment, even though we can't use it until the town unless and until the town manager. Now, I'm hopeful that having seen how Zoom works, the resistance to remote participation will meld away.
but that's remote participation by board member.
Yes.
Yes, it is not
Right,
talking
right.
about remote,
Okay, now-
exactly.
Right.
And it's about the public participation. Zoom is about the public participation.
Right. Now that has been fully authorized by virtue of the recent act through April,
Correct,
so that neither the board nor the public need to be physically present.
correct.
Well, who makes that call, whether it's in person or a video? The board?
Yeah. And, you know, and unless all of you tell me that you definitely want to do it in person, I mean, I think we've all found Zoom meetings convenient. And you know, and in fact, I would add, I think we've had more participation from the public by virtue of Zoom because it's much easier for people to participate.
I agree.
Yeah.
And so, I mean,
I think a
unless-
lot of towns are fine.
I mean, unless all of you tell me you want to meet in person, I think if we have this authority, we'll just use the Zoom.
That's fine.
Yeah, I'm fine. I will say that just as the engineer previously mentioned, it's nice to be back. It's nice to have some visuals, but it's really easier to be working from home and we could see more public participation because of Zoom.
I think we get more public participation on Zoom. All right, so then the second thing we did is can you explain, we tried to make the changes that were requested at the last hearing to the application. And then I caught one other inconsistency. And let me give it to Daphne to just kind of go over what got changed from the prior thing you've seen.
The one thing that, all the changes that you all wanted from the last meeting, those have been adopted and have been included in this revision. John found an inconsistency which had to do with the owner. If the owner, a letter from the owner certifying authorization to apply must be included. The language under submission materials wasn't consistent with that. And so we changed that.
So it's consistent.
So now it's consistent. And the one other change that
Oh, and you put it in, you want to have an electronic.
we want to have an electronic copy. That was always something that we requested, but it really was chasing the applicant. So now we really want that. And
So you want a hard copy plus electronic copy?
Correct.
And what's the time frame to get the electronic simultaneously?
Well, right now, everybody's doing that immediately as that's the way that they've been applying. Have been
So should
applying
we say
electronic.
that, the time frame to get the electronic?
That's,
No,
no,
I
it's
think
part
it'll
of their
work out.
application.
Yeah, it's part of, the application's not complete until we get it.
Right.
Now, one of the things that, that is in your rules and regulations is the 13 copies, 13 hard copies. But because of this process that where we have been doing them in electronic, some of the reviewing people want to continue to have them electronically. They would only want them in paper for those very complicated, comprehensive plans. But they've been working well with that. The planning board no longer wants paper. There were, the police, the fire chief said absolutely he would prefer, he wants paper. No, not paper, electronic, I'm sorry, electronic. So I really think that if we're going to have a number in the rules and regulations, I think, I don't know whether it should, do you want to change the rules and regulations?
I mean, if we were sure we don't need 13 copies, we would change it. But I mean, let me just say personally, I really want us to get back to getting things on paper. I mean, I find it a nightmare to read some of these plans that come electronically. And you're trying to zoom it in and zoom it out. When we have a project with any complexity, it's a lot easier to have real plans that you can look at and see.
And that's no problem. That's no problem, but 13 looks like,
Yeah, so it seems.
so I can do 5, or I could be 6, or, but something that's more realistic.
The board members is 5.
No,
I mean, it was 13 came up because they went to the building inspector, went to the board, and went.
6 to the planning board,
6
5
to
to
the-
you guys, right there, that's 11. So really, yeah,
I think we don't have enough information.
I'm gathering.
I mean, I think if you want to circle back with the planning board, if they were getting 6 copies and make sure that they're okay, we can come back and make a further amendment to the rules. But I don't think we know enough to make a change tonight.
Like right now I'm gathering that data and having people email me saying exactly what they want, so.
Okay, so one other question is, how do the board members want to get their packets? I personally want to get it in paper and not electronically, but.
Can we get it both ways?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'd like at least paper, if not both.
Yeah, I got very frustrated one month when there were 180 pages I had to run through my
Yeah.
silly little home printer.
Yeah.
Well, I think the reality is we all print them out, even if we get them electronically. so-
No, I know, so it's not a problem, but I think it's nice that you guys get them electronically and,
You can also save them and store them and refer to them later.
yeah.
So if you're getting them electronically, send them to us, but I think I'm hearing everyone say
You
that
don't,
we want to go back to the old
I have no
vision
problem.
of getting a packet where it's printed out so that we don't have to print it out ourselves.
I mean, like,
And also, in some cases, we'll get real plans, you know?
Some detail you can.
Right.
All right, so I guess I need a motion to approve the rules and application as amended.
So moved.
Kathy,
Second that.
all in favor? All right, then we're adjourned.
and then
Oh, yeah.
there's 4 cases.
There are 4 cases. Yeah, well,
Boy, that worked.
that's fine.
Tim can go anyway.
Well, he gets all 4 of them.
So
He doesn't oppose.
do you want to do the tile shop, the parking?
Sure.
Do that? And Peter, you want to do this last one?
Sure.
And then that would give Howard Grosvenor Road?
Sure.
So,
That was the,
and I can get the garage?
He's got no third character.
Yeah, you guess
Okay.
you're right.
oh, would you like the more challenging ones?
No,
I-
I'm happy. I've been doing a lot.
No, yeah, okay. HSG guy.
So you do Grove, you got it?
Yeah.
I'm doing Fenton Road.
Yeah.
Howard's doing Grosvenor. Kathy's doing Highland Avenue. And Peter's doing Wilshire Park. Thank you.
Great.
We're adjourned.
All right.
It's nice to see you all.
I know.
It is. It's
Good
gonna
to
be
see you.
good.
Be seen.
Been a
There's
long
some-
Thank you.
He never asks you after his questions.
Cable.
Vaccinated.
The cable